Right, to anybody that doesn't know me, my name's Soren. Part-time blogger, don't shut up about whiskey, and somehow managed to get a job with the English Whisky Company as an ambassador. The whole idea was that I was going to do their festival work, and the week that took me on, bloody COVID hit. So 2 years of sat on a Zoom sessions like tonight. Much rather be with you all in person and having a good crack and things like that. But unfortunately, we have to do it this way. He's even got the mask on. Just to let you know, like I have said, I have got COVID, so unfortunately I won't be drinking along with you because I can't taste or smell anything. So hopefully you'll give me plenty of feedback for what you lot think. Generally try to do these with plenty of discussion. I don't want to preach you because you're all whiskey people. I know quite a few of you, so you know, let's just have a good night, drink whiskey, and enjoy it. So what I sort of say is, first one up is parched. Hopefully you've all got it poured and ready to drink. We'll get straight into it because you don't want to just sit here listening to me talk all night. I'm sure you'd rather drink the whiskey. While you sort of have a nose and a sniff of this one, what I'll do is I'll give you a quick sort of intro to English whiskey at the distillery, and then I'll give you a few notes on this whiskey, and we'll go from there. So, the English Whisky Company, founded 2005, opened 2006. We were the first whiskey distillery to open in England after over 103 years of no distilleries. We weren't the first to make whiskey, so we'll make that clear, but we were the first dedicated whiskey distillery. And the reason we opened a whiskey distillery was the founding member, James Nelstrop. He was part of a farming family for generations, grew barley. A lot of the barley grown on the Norfolk coast all goes up to Scotland to make whiskey. And then we all bloody buy it back to come back down to England. So James was, well, he's a whiskey drinker. Why don't we make some whiskey? So he decided, rather than retiring from farming life, then we would open a distillery and we would start making some whiskey. So in 2005, the application was put in for a distillery on part of our own farming land. 2006, that was granted, and the first whiskey flowed in December 2006. We currently produce around 70,000 litres a year, which isn't a lot. If you kind of imagine, probably something like Glenfiddich probably does that in a day or 2 days to what we do in a full year. That's not as much as we could make if we went to 7 days a week, but it's as much as we want to make. I think that's the easiest way of saying things, rather than just producing and producing and producing. We want to keep it small. We want to hopefully produce quality. And I'm not saying that by producing more, it wouldn't be quality. I'm just saying that's how we feel comfortable in what we do. So the first whiskey that you've got today is actually kind of classed as grain whiskey. So this is our parched, and it's a kind of take on Irish pot still, if you like. So it's malted barley, unmalted barley, with a few dried rolled oats in there. And hopefully what you'll find with this whiskey is it's a real gentle, easygoing summertime whiskey, I feel. You know, it's one of those whiskies that you can drink it neat, beautiful with a little bit of ice in summer, a little bit of old-fashioned lemonade even, but just real gentle and real citrusy, and it's got that sweetness there that you get from a typical grain whiskey. Now, our grain whiskies, all of them, so we do 2 or 3 different ones, they're all still done in pot stills. They're not done in column stills. It's done exactly the same way as we would make our single malt, but obviously we're using different grains with this one. Anybody got any thoughts on this one? You all fine?
Immediately, the first thing I was just surprised by like the kind of body of the texture of it. It was like, I know it smelled kind of very kind of grain forward, but it had that nice bit more texture to it.
Yeah. Are you finding the sweetness in there? Have you tasted it yet? Yeah. And that's what we kind of look at, you know. As you can see with this one, there's, oh, you haven't all got bottles. So it's a no age statement. And again, you know, there's been a lot of arguments about whether, I think Tom's trying to put, yeah, it is. I think even with this one, there's no actual ages on there. So it doesn't give you a distillation bottling date, whereas our small batch does. So generally, this is probably hitting around that 5-year-old mark. Yeah, I'm going to say it's, when you get to my age, looking at small bottles like that, it's not very easy to read.
Yeah, it's October 2019.
So that'll be the bottling date.
Yeah, bottling. It doesn't say the. It's...
No, that's what I say. I think it's one of those where a few of our expressions, what we try to do is we basically bottle when they're ready or when they're needed. So each batch will vary in age. So rather than putting any age statement on there, we just do it to a profile of what we're looking for. But I like to say, think of this one as, if you think of one of those rare warm summer days in England, real nice, sat out on the decking, or, you know, however you like to drink your whiskey, sun beating down on you. You don't want a big heavy malt. This really does go nicely with just, like I say, a nice little bit of ice, a little bit of old-fashioned lemonade. That's where I love this one. Sort of as a tall drink in summer, beautiful. But, you know, the one thing that I will say on this one is, you drink it how the hell you want. You know, you've bought the whiskey, drink it how you want. If you want to add Coca-Cola, add Coca-Cola. There's no pretense in this one. I'm not going to tell you how to drink your whiskey. I don't care. You drink it how you enjoy it. Simple as that. But anybody not like it? That's a good start. We'll end here. But can you see what I mean by it's a real summertime type dram?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it was, as Chase said, it's quite a surprising one. It gives you a little bit more than you're expecting, and a bit more interesting. And yeah, Toby's put very fresh in the chat, which I can definitely agree with. It's got something, a bit of greenness to it as well, hasn't it? That's quite
the one thing that's come up recently, and I don't necessarily find it myself, but is anybody finding any smoke in this?
I thought there was on the nose.
It's interesting because we have poured this at a couple of festivals recently, and several people have said, "Oh, we're surprised with the smoky element," and I just can't. I don't get it. Now, I've never found the smoke in it, but it was surprising to me that one or two people have. That's why I sort of wondered if anybody on here was picking it up, just to see whether it's a recurring thing or whether it's a festival type thing. And you think, what have they had in the glasses before?
No, when I smelt it, I thought, God, have I messed up here and put a peated grain as the first dram? But you don't. I mean, you don't get it on the palate. Although it's got a little bit of sort of spiciness as well to it, which is quite nice. But yeah, I don't know what it was on the nose, but yeah, I definitely thought I was either smelling smoke or having a stroke. One of the two.
I put a drop of water in mine, and it brings out sort of very meaty sort of taste to it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And when you consider the lightness of the whiskey in the first place, it's surprising how much it can deliver as well. You know, that's one thing that I often find. I mean, I love Irish pot still whiskies, but I always find them to be quite, I don't want to say one-dimensional because that sounds rude, but you kind of know what you're going to get with them, and that's what I love about them. Whereas this one, it does alter a little bit, and like you say, when you put that water in a little bit, it does just sort of change it slightly and goes a little bit more left field. So are we all pretty much in agreement that's not a bad dram to start with then? Yeah.
Yeah, we've got a few notes in the chat. So Toby's got a charred oak note, and Phil says water brings out the pepper. Nice start.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I agree
reviews.
With the pepper. Yeah, I agree with the pepper. It does just does give it that little bit of spiciness in there, and I think that's what really does intrigue me. when you add that bit of sort of old-fashioned lemonade and things like that, it just spices it up a little bit. It's really nice when you do that. Are we all ready to move on? Yeah. Herbal note, yeah. I think the herbal note possibly comes a little bit from the unmalted barley as well. I often find that when you do use unmalted barley, that you do get that little bit of herbal side to it. So I would agree with that, definitely. I think Phil's got bigger samples than everybody else. That looked a bigger glass to what everybody else was drinking.
He's a rugby man. He's probably double parked.
It was a quick palate cleanser.
Oh, that's the palate cleanser, right? Fair enough. So we're now moving on to what we class as the original. And this is where some people kind of get a little bit confused with why we've called it the original. So this isn't our original release, because obviously we started with the chapters. This is one that we class as our, I want to say entry level, but that's probably a word that a lot of people are really trying to move away from these days. So this is a very approachable whiskey. Some people, when we're pouring it, they call it a session whiskey. Again, it's not the most politically correct words to use anymore, because that doesn't do responsible drinking, and we're all responsible drinkers. So this is one of those whiskies that I like to say is just a simple drinking whiskey. It's one of those that when you pour it, I want you to literally pour it, pick the glass up, take a drink, but carry on doing what you were doing. So like if you sat with a group of friends and you're discussing something, or you're having a barbecue or a get together, you're literally going to pick up your glass, you're going to drink it, and you're going to put it straight back down and carry on drinking. It is a drinking whiskey. And this whiskey is very simple to us. It's all bourbon casks. So first and second fill bourbon. It's around the 5 to 6 year old mark, if anybody needs to know. And again, those bourbon casks, all our bourbon casks that we use, all come from one source. Everything comes from Jim Beam Distillery. So anything that's held bourbon that we will use has all come from Jim Beam. Gives us a consistency. There's no, oh, that cask was better than that cask in the sense of because it was a Jack Daniels or whatever. It's all Jim Beam. We all know what every cask is going to give us a little bit of something different. So it's just nice to know that everything has still come from the same distillery. So the consistency is there, but the wood will still do the talking, if that makes sense. And hopefully what you're finding on the palate with this one is it's those very typical bourbon notes. You're getting the sweetness of the vanillas, the toffees. You're getting that little bit of spice in there, not too much, hopefully. You're getting the caramel. You're getting those typical bourbon notes. So yeah, so it's one of those whiskies that literally kind of, you've got to be in the right mood for it. Whereas this one, like I say, it's more of a whiskey to me that you're just going to drink any time. It's a nice intro to our whiskey in a sense. It's gonna step you up. So this hopefully would be the first one you'll try, and then you'll move on and hopefully try some others. And what we try to say with this one is that you're probably not going to turn on and say that's the best whiskey I've ever tasted if you're already drinking whiskey. What you're hopefully going to say is, do you know, that's intrigued me. I want to try something else from that distillery. And then that moves you on. That it's an entry to a stepping stone of all our whiskies then. And this one is our biggest seller. It's probably our biggest seller because we obviously bottle more of this than anything else. This is our DNA, if you want to say. So anything you find in this one, in theory, it will step up to everything else.
How much does this one retail for?
So this one should be retailing around the £39 mark.
Not bad.
So where was we with the distillery? So yeah, 96 hours of fermentation. Like I say, all our whiskies are matured, or all our bourbon side is matured in Jim Beam, ex-Jim Beam casks. Those Jim Beam casks are all matured on site at the moment, and hopefully going forward for quite some time, we should still be maturing on site. We've got plenty of room. So it's something that we're quite proud of, that everything we do is done on site, other than the peating, which we'll come to in a bit. So we obviously distill on site, we mature on site, we bottle on site, we label on site, everything's done by hand. Peach, yeah, that's something that a few people have mentioned on this one. That sort of tropical fruit as well. There's a little bit of pineapple sometimes in there. Anybody sort of, I know, I think it was Toby, you said you prefer this to the first one. Anybody still preferring the first one to this one? Or are we stepping up? Have we gone the right way with this? Yeah.
I think it's a step up for me, even though I did really enjoy the first one. I think this has just got a touch of oiliness on the palate, which is quite nice. And like lots more flavour developing throughout it, more in line with the malts that we enjoy. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think, like I say, with this one, it's one of those whiskies that when we talk about whiskies, a lot of the time we talk about sharing whiskies with friends, and this to me is one of those whiskies that when you've got people coming around and you want that drink, it's a nice whiskey to reach for. You're not going to be the tight ass sob that says, no, I'm not sharing my whiskey. This is one that does beckon to be shared. You want people to drink it with you, but it's not going to take you away from what you're doing. It's going to be something you drink and you enjoy in a social atmosphere, and that's the whole point of this one. It's all about the social atmosphere. But we're ready to move on to the next one. Yeah. If I'm rushing you, please stop me and slow me down. I'm only trying to get through because I know my voice is going to break at some point tonight, and I'll start in the coughing fits and all sorts. So.
Yeah,
going too fast.
We said we'd go quite fast initially, and then if people want to go back to their drams afterwards, or I know some people are pouring half drams and stuff like that, so don't feel you have to drink all your dram in the time that we're moving on, but it's just so that we get the best out of Soren, hear about the drams, and then we can have a bit of discussion afterwards as to what you guys think of them as well. So thanks, Soren.
Yeah. So if we go on to the Virgin Oak now. Now, the Virgin Oak is exactly what it says on the label, basically. It is Virgin Oak. I believe this one is 6 years old. So each of our batches do vary. This is probably one of my favourites of the lineup of what we have generally available. So Virgin Oak, brand new oak casks, still what they are, casks that would end up at Jim Beam. So it's not that we've gone anywhere else. I think it's the Claremont cooperage. So we purchased the Virgin Oak from them. We put our whiskey into it, and generally we are releasing it around the 6 to 7 year old. We do have a few older versions of this. We don't want it to go too oaky, which is very typical of Virgin Oak, basically. If you leave it in for too long, it does become too oaky. But for me, I love that oakiness. It's something I do look for, and that's why I think the Virgin Oak is something that really does come to me quite nicely. Now, with our Virgin Oak, this is the first of the small batches that we're going into tonight. So for those of you that remember the old chapters, when we first started releasing whiskey, we went chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, chapter 5, etc., etc. This is kind of the follow-on of those chapters, because we got to chapter 17 and it was, how far can we keep going with chapters? We're going to end up with hundreds and hundreds. So we've gone to the small batch. All our small batches are released at 46%. Jumping slightly back to the first two and to this, and any whiskies going forward, they're all non-chill filtered. It may not say it on the bottle, but guarantee they are non-chill filtered. For the simple reason we don't have a chill filtration system. So, you know, that's the reason. One or two people do say to us, that's something that we really should be putting onto the bottles. I agree with you. You know, we should be shouting that we're non-chill filtered. The fact is, because they all are non-chill filtered, we don't want to say it's a given, but it is. We don't chill filter anything. All these are natural coloured, so we don't use any colouring in our whiskies neither. And as you can see from this, it's a nice golden, typical virgin oak style colour. One thing, I was talking to somebody at a festival recently, and we was talking about the virgin oak, and somebody sort of said to me, well, where'd you get your colour from if you don't use colouring? Because virgin oak won't give you any colour because it's never held bourbon. And I can see a few of you, you know, it's sort of the same thing as I said. Obviously, the colouring is coming from the virgin oak. It's from the wood. The taste is from the wood. Anybody that wants to go down the line of saying the taste comes from elsewhere, yes, fermentation, yes, distillation, yes, maturation. Anywhere else, it's debatable. I don't think we want to really get into the arguments of how much we believe or how much we don't believe. But to me, most of the colour is basically coming from the oak, so is the flavour. If we want to get into a discussion, quite happy to have a chat with you about it, but that's my personal thoughts. So how are you finding this one? Anybody disliking this for a start? No, all into this one. Do we all feel we've stepped up again then?
This is by far my favourite so far.
Yeah, this is one that I really enjoy. This is, to me, this is one of those whiskies that I will reach for on one of those days where I come home from work and feel that I want a pick-me-up type whiskey. I want something that I'm going to feel good about drinking, something that every time I drink this whiskey, I'm going to get something different. It's that there are a lot of dimensions in this whiskey. Hopefully you're not just picking up those typical caramels, toffees, vanilla type notes. You are getting those, you know, there is that citrusy note again in here. Yeah, I'm glad. Wash house. Yeah, it's, to me, this is when we talk about virgin oak, like I said earlier, it's sometimes you just get too much oak. This, it's just nice. It's the spot. And the other thing, like I was saying with the small batch as well, we tend to release between 1,500 and 2,000 bottles at a time. And the reason we do that is we want it to be still exclusive in the sense it's like a limited edition. And it all depends where we want to call a limited edition. We feel that sort of 2,000 to 2,500 is around as much as you really want to be going. One of the expressions, sometimes we do go a little bit heavier, but that's enough for it not to hang around for too long. Because the worst thing is when you go and you try a whiskey and you think, oh, I want that one, and you go back and you pick a bottle up and it's something different, but it's still the same virgin oak or triple distilled, whatever we may be releasing. You don't want to get an old batch. You always want something fresh. And the other thing with the small batches, as you'll see, coloured label on them. Hopefully that's showing up. So virgin oak will always come as yellow until you go to the virgin oak that's peated, and then that will be blue. So it's kind of a, if you can remember if you can't necessarily remember what whiskey you've drunk, but you remember it was a yellow label or a blue label or a red label or a green label, it does help you along with our bottles as well. The other thing that you'll notice is, obviously I showed you two different styles of bottles there. So that's the way all our small batches will be going now. And if any of you haven't seen these bottles, these are Glencairn Crystal decanter bottles. So all our small batches will now be released in this style of bottle going forward. gives you that little bit more extra feel to it. Just looks a little bit nicer. The bottles are reusable as well. But we'll come to that in a bit when we get onto that.
Does that change, though? How much does that impact the cost of the product?
So
Does it have to become more expensive because of the choice of bottle?
Yes, there's no getting away from that, because if you've bought the old style bottle compared to the new style bottle, you will see an increase in price. We can't deny that. But what we've tried to do is just give you something to make the small batches a little bit more special. So it's more like a limited edition. I mean, there are other reasons. Obviously, it's through COVID. There was bottle shortages and things like that. We've had to step up and buy these bottles, so it's not a case of we're just charging you more for what we have had to pay a substantial amount more. We haven't passed that full cost on, so we are absorbing a little bit of that cost. But yeah, there is an increase in payments. But hopefully what you will see is, and I know there will be a lot of people out there that will say, but maybe we don't want a posher bottle, we'd rather have a cheaper whiskey. And I get that, I do fully get that. But we just want it to sort of stand out a little bit more than obviously our competition as well. And we feel even with the price increase, with what we're doing with the whiskies that are now going into the bottle, which are also becoming older. So there would have been a natural increase in prices probably because of the ages going up. So we've kind of given you a double impact there, where we've on a lot of what has come out recently, the age has gone up. We've put it in a better bottle. We've put it in something a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. Going forward, people will also say, well, how does that affect sustainability and the impact on, the atmosphere and things like that? It doesn't really make any differences, because you're still getting a glass bottle. One way or another, we've not changed that. We're changing the packaging, things like that. So we are becoming more cleaner, more greener. But yeah, the bottle has impacted the price a little bit. That was a long yes or no answer, wasn't it? But hopefully, going back to the whiskey in the bottle. So this one is what was released last on the Virgin Oak side. It will probably be another year, 18 months before we release another Virgin Oak unpeated. So 2 to 3 times a year we are releasing these small batches, and each small batch that we do release is a different style of whiskey. So we don't just go Virgin Oak, triple distill, blah, 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 blah. Every time we do release a new small batch, it is a different style, hopefully. But what we'll do now is we'll move on to the Somerton exclusive. Now, unfortunately, I'm going to have to kind of take a little bit of a backseat on leading this one, because I've never actually tried this. Tom did send me a sample to go along with you, but because of COVID, I wasn't able to try it, nose it, sniff it, taste it, or anything. So I really don't know very much about this one. And this is obviously, because it's a private bottling, this is something that I won't, as an ambassador for the company, wouldn't get hold of. So what I'll do is I'll hand you over to Tom for a couple of minutes just to talk about the whiskey, and then I'll come back and discuss a little bit about the distillery, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. So I'd like to throw a curveball in there. I know many of you are Somerton members anyway, but I'd had this bottle sitting on my shelf begging to be opened. And given that we're trying the Virgin and the Smoky Virgin tonight, I thought it might be an interesting one to chuck into the mix. So this one is a Virgin Oak and Refill Bourbon vatting. It was bottled in August 2021, so I don't know the age of it. But
well, I can give you the ages if you want, Tom.
Yeah, if you got it.
So we had 2 casks, which I presume are the Virgin Oak casks, which were distilled in July 2015. And then we had 2 casks, which again I presume are the ex-bourbon casks, which were 2013. So in theory, it's a 6-year-old whiskey because of the 2015, bottled in 2021, I believe. So I think you got it September, October, did you?
Yeah.
So in theory, it's a 6-year-old again.
So has anyone had this bottle or tried this bottle before?
Yeah, I've tried it. I really liked it. I thought it was like, I've tried a couple of English whiskey company bottles before, and I think it's probably one of the favourites of it I've had. Just, I really like that kind of ex-bourbon style it came across with.
Is this one bottled at full strength? Have you got
46.
No, it's 46%.
46, is it? Right. Yeah.
But Washhouse has done a full bottle. I'm not sure if that's tonight or just since he got the Somerton one through, but hopefully he's glad of the extra sample. So what do people get on this one?
I'm getting some tropical fruits on it.
So that again will probably be coming from the ex-bourbon casks, and hopefully what you're getting is a mixture of almost the second and third dram kind of mix. So the original and the virgin, with obviously it is ramped up a little bit from the original, which was 43%, to the virgin, which was 46. So there should be very similar casks to what was in the previous dram, and then just given that sort of extra dimension from those bourbon casks.
Yeah, I think definitely get that sort of mixture of the two coming through. Like Toby said, you get some tropical notes. There's something sort of something nice in there. Coconut's a good one. The official notes say honeycomb and almonds with hints of tobacco. So I don't know if anyone's picking up those in there. I have to say they're not massively notes that are shouting out at me at the moment.
I think tasting notes are something that's very subjective. We always say, and when I'm doing tastings, I always say to people, look, just because I get it or somebody else in the room gets it, you should never worry if you're not getting those tasting notes, because it's all subjective. It's all about memories and opinions, and we all know what we've all got opinions, blah blah blah, you know, the old saying. But you know, it's one of those that when somebody says tobacco, well, if you've never smoked or tasted or smelt tobacco, then how would you know what it tastes or smells like? So you know, if you don't get it, I always find it's easier for people to say no, I don't get it, then everyone nod their head and say yeah, I'm getting that. And then sit there and look confused for the rest of the tasting, because it just doesn't work sometimes.
I like Jade's fruit salad sweets on the nose. I mean, that goes well. And James has got some. He said he's got to get in the meatiness of the parched in there as well. Yeah.
One thing I will say with so that covers these first four, and obviously going forward, all our barley, or the majority of our barley, is all local grown. We do have farms outside of Norfolk. In fact, I didn't actually say that at the beginning. So for those of you that don't know, the distillery is located in Roundham, near Thetford, which is Norfolk area. Some people like to say it's the best barley growing area, east coast of England, produces the best barley. I have heard people say that the Irish produce the best barley, but yeah, no, I would go along and say the east coast of England. So all our barley is sent to Crisps, which is a local maltings. They malt it for us, send it back to us. The only difference is when we want peated barley, it's still sent to Crisps, who then send it up to Aberdeen and peat it with Scottish peat. As we come on to the latter few drams, when we talk about peated whiskey, there are different styles of peat, and that will give you different flavourings as to the type of whiskey that we're going on to, but we'll talk about that in a minute when we get to there. But so yeah, all our barley, or the majority of the barley, is local grown. We do have some from Lincolnshire, from family farms, and the idea is one day that will probably be put into a bottle and how it's labelled, but it will be a Nelstrop owned full farm type whiskey. Hopefully that will come sometime in the near future. It may be a few more years yet, but we do have enough whiskey to be able to go ahead and do that at some point. And for those of you that didn't quite pick it up earlier, we did start to produce whiskey in 2006. So for those of you that are very good at maths, we are now into our 15th year. So we are the oldest English whiskey distillery. We do have whiskey that is 15 years old. We may be releasing a 15-year-old whiskey at some point this year just to celebrate it, simply because we can. And every time we produce an older whiskey, we'll say simply because we can, because we're the only ones that can at the moment. And unfortunately in the lineup, we haven't got one of our oldest age statements, which is an 11-year-old. We are just about, I think we're releasing that next month. We've got batch 3 coming out. And that is a really, really good whiskey. I think a lot of you have probably had it because a few of you are nodding. Again, it's all bourbon. And why 11? Because we can. It's that old saying, you know, we can. But how are you finding this one anyway? Do we feel as though we're still stepping up, or are we leveling out a little bit? Yeah, James, yeah. So do we think this is quite on a par with our Virgin Oak? Because this is an interesting thing that we often find is when we start putting independent style bottlings in, and I know we bottled this one for Somerton, but obviously it was one for an outside source. You always get a lot of people saying, why'd you give all your best whiskies away? And it's very interesting as a distillery that we try to put a particular profile out there, which is changing a little bit at the moment. And when we are getting independent bottlers coming forward with independent bottlings, and people are saying, oh, that's much better than what you put out, it's very easy to do that as a single cask or a very small batch, rather than as something general that we have to kind of put a whiskey out there where people almost recognize that it is our type of whiskey, if that makes sense. But I know there's been a lot of good things said about this whiskey. So hopefully you are all enjoying this one.
Sorry, Jay, you go first.
Just going to say, very much enjoyed that. I think when you start coming to like these ones, all the ones kind of going 46% or above, is where you start going. They're probably leveling out, but it's down to your preference now and which one you prefer. Like,
yeah,
there's no inherently this is the best one. It's just whichever one you individually like more.
Yeah, and that's the reason that we have gone to the small batch. So we put the 2, or in theory there is 3 core range now. So we put the original, we put the smoky, we've got the 11 in the middle, which is part of an ongoing release. It's just that we can't produce enough of it to be permanent release, but we do want it to be there all the time. And then with the small batches, the idea is that we put something different out every time, so you can find what you like, and hopefully it's a stepping stone, left and right, left and right, left and right. You find the ones that you enjoy, and it also gives you something to compare and contrast with over the years, and you know, hopefully we put enough out there that it's not a case of it's disappeared overnight or you can't get hold of a bottle. It's there for a little bit of time, depending which expression we're doing. And you can always go back and get another bottle at some point. But we also try not to make them vastly different, that it's, oh, I really like that one, but I can never find it again. And I don't like anything else going forward. So hopefully you'll find something that you like all the time, but with that little bit of difference in there.
I was going to ask Soren. So the 11-year-old, is that your oldest official release that you've got out?
Yes and no. So it was the oldest age statement at that point. Now we have put older single casks out. So depending which market you're in, we have just released, I think, 3 single casks or 4 to China, and they kind of went 11, 12, 13. I think there was 2 11s or something and 1 13-year-old. Now, in theory, that is the oldest age statement, because it did have an age statement on that one. So yeah, sort of 13-year-old roughly is the oldest ones we've put out. 11 is the oldest one that we will put out commercially as a general release. Like I say, later on this year, there could be a 15 coming out. Got to be careful what I say in case it does sneak out onto the public domain, but obviously that will be a very limited amount. It will be a special bottling. It will be a celebration, the fact that we are in our 15th year. We expect to keep putting the 11-year-old out for the foreseeable future. What you probably will find is there will be an odd small batch that will be older going forward, but it won't necessarily have the age statement as an age statement, but it will give you the details of distillation and bottling dates, so you can work them out on the small batch. But yeah, going forward, unless it's a single cask, 11 will be the oldest. So are we ready to move on to a little bit of sherry? Or a little bit of sherried whiskey, should I say?
I'd say so, yeah.
Yeah. So what I was gonna do, but we'll kind of do it a little bit different. I was gonna do the 2 sherries together now, but I think Tom's put them in a slightly different order. So we'll go to this one and we'll leave the other one. But when I'll talk about them kind of together, if that makes any sense. So just in case I do drop out later on, you've had the information for the latter one when we get to it. So these 2 are both small batches again. These are now put into our new style bottlings. This one is a sherry butt. The other one is a sherry hogshead, or sherry hogsheads. It's not single cast. Both of these should be really relating about the 9-year-old mark. Slightly different distillations on them, slightly different bottling dates. This one is the unpeated version. You have got a peated version coming up. Now, what we did with this one is, on 1 or 2 of you will know that we do a liqueur, which is called PX, and that we do mature that on site, and then we do use their casks, or them casks, for maturing our whiskies. This is not one of those whiskies. So this is made in a slightly different way. So what we did with these, we had the sherry butts and the sherry hogsheads specially seasoned for us. So they had 3 years of Oloroso, and then after having 3 years of Oloroso, they then had 2 years of Pedro Jimenez in the same casks. We then got the casks delivered to us, and we put our bourbon matured whiskey in there. So whiskey that were around 7.5 years old, roughly. And then they had between 14 and 18 months of maturation in those seasoned casks. So hopefully what you're getting is, when you look at the colour, it screams sherry bomb. But hopefully what you're finding is that those sherry notes are certainly there, but it's not necessarily a big dominant sherry bomb. It's allowing those bourbon notes to come through as well. So you're getting the typical sweet stickiness of the PX to start with. You then go into the dryness of the Oloroso, and then hopefully you're getting that very typical DNA of our whiskies, where you're getting that sweet toffee nose, the citruses, the maltiness, those grassy notes as well. It's not all necessarily about the sherry on this, but it's a big part of it. Hemp and coriander spice on the nose, yeah. Is anybody finding that does anybody not like sherry bombs or sherried whiskies? we all quite happy with sherry whiskies. Good, that's good then. Anybody not enjoying this one? You're all on mute, so it's silent. It's brilliant. Nobody's saying anything. I love it. And this is one of the discussions that we've had recently is, why do we mature whiskey in sherry casks? You know, why not just do it all in bourbon and things like that? Well, the simple answer to that is, if you go back in history, a lot of the original whiskey, or, you know, when we go back to how whiskey was starting to be matured, it was all matured in things like sherry casks, red wine casks, white wine casks. These are the original maturation styles, because these were the transport casks that people used to transport the whiskies from, say, Scotland or Ireland, whichever one you want to discuss, to where they were being sold or bought, say in London. It had to be moved somehow, and it would have been put in empty red wine barrels, empty sherry barrels. So these are the sort of original maturations, if you like. And it's quite rare for us as a distillery to put something as big and bold as this out. If you've looked at our releases in the past, they've all been very, not gentle drams, but very easygoing, very approachable, very whiskies that are not going to upset one or the other. You know, you're just going to get along with them. And that's one thing that's changed a little bit more recently, that we're now looking at putting those bigger and bolder and older expressions out there. And these sherry ones are certainly a lot more in your face than what we've, as a distillery, put out in the past. Now, there have been independent bottlings put out there that have been a little bit more in your face, but these are probably some of the first ones we've done. I mean, if you look back, we have had a sherry whiskey before. We have had double cask, which was sherry and bourbon, but nothing quite as bold and big as these two whiskies, or these next three, should I say. And this is one that, as somebody working with the English Whiskey Distillery, I love the fact that we're now starting to put something a little bit different out there to what people are expecting from us. It's no longer those gentle, citrusy type whiskies. We are moving on to something that's got a little bit more body, a little bit more boldness, a little bit more in your face, a little bit more not sitting on the line, but sort of jumping over that fence where people might say, oh, I don't like that. You know, we're now looking at that type of whiskey where people will say a bit more critique, a bit more critical about what we're putting out there. And that's good for us as a company. You know, if people don't like our whiskies, we'd rather them say than just go away and say, yeah, I didn't like that one from them because it was this or it was that. If people tell us that, yeah, it's not quite what I want, or yeah, I'm really loving it, then we know where we can go as a company as well. So are you all liking this one?
There's some really good notes in the chat. Phil's comparing it to the Bimba Oloroso cask, and he's got some lovely date and raisin notes that are in there at the back. James again is finding this one the best so far. Is it, James? James might have paused, but yeah, I think people are really enjoying this one. I wonder, Soren, having tried some really nice cask strength English whiskies, do you think there'll be any general releases at a higher strength than the 46?
I mean, we are putting a lot of single casks out at the moment. I think we've just done a couple. There's a couple that we're not really saying too much about because they're only available at the distillery. So there are a couple of distillery exclusives, which I think one was a Saturn's and the other one was I think the other one was a rum cask again. So obviously you've got them at full cask strength. We do a bottle your own in store in the distillery as well, which is very similar to the Circus bottling for those that know what that one was like. So yeah, there's always going to be something single cask wise, but as general core range, if we want to class the small batch as core range, because it is, obviously it just changes with the style, it will always stay at 46. So we'll always have the 43, we'll always have the 46, and then we'll have the cast strength. Just one thing I will say, and I do get pulled up a lot, if people see me waving my hands a lot, it's just something I do. So I'm not Gordon Ramsay, and I know he does it a lot. It's
okay.
It's just I do move a lot, so I do apologise if people find it amusing. I
just saw you saying about movements. I just saw Phil's ears prick up at the sound of that rum cask distillery exclusive, because he split a bottle of your rum cask a little while ago for a blind tasting. And
all right.
it went down really well, didn't it, Phil?
I thought it was superb. Yeah, that
was that the cast strength one, or the
cast strength? Thought it was excellent.
Yeah, that was, if it's the one I'm thinking, was that the one that was released at the same time as the small batch?
Yeah.
So what we did with that was one where we obviously made the small batch and we just kept one, or I don't think it was a full single cask even. I think it was a majority of it that was put aside because we'd got enough to do the bottlings we needed. So we released what was left as a single cask, and that, that really did show off that rum within. But I'm pretty sure that the one we've just released but it can only be bought at the distillery, is a rum cask. What I'll do is, in a couple of minutes, I'll shut off and run and have a quick look for you, because it's in the next room. But it's a stunner as well. It's a little bit older, obviously, and jumping onto that one, I know it's not in the lineup and sort of going a little bit left field. Those rum casks, we didn't bottle everything at that point, so we do have the same sort of stocks going that are now aging for another year, nearly 18 months, I think, on from that one. So there probably will be another release coming up soon of that same stock at an older date, and then those casks have been refilled. So that they are going, and the idea is coming up, we will do more rum casks, because that was really, really well received. So I think that it does work quite well with what we're doing.
Dave Washhouse has just asked whether we can know what the rum was that it went into, where the rum had come from.
No.
Leo, we have to keep guessing on that one.
No, for the simple reason, it's not that I don't want to. I have no idea myself. The rum was bought as new make rum. If that's, I don't know whether they're called fresh rum new make, but anyway, it was bought as new make. So we matured it ourselves. So therefore, as far as I'm aware, for that reason as well, we were not allowed to name the distillery. And it's something that I as a whiskey drinker myself, we do look and we think, it'd be nice to know where it's come from. But I also look at it another way and think, does it really matter? Because however that rum was, because we've matured it, so we didn't buy the casks already seasoned. We bought the rum itself and seasoned our own casks. Now that rum is still maturing. That rum may be getting released. Hence, another reason why we can't name the distillery, because it wouldn't be fair on the distillery, because it's been matured in a totally different way. Because we're maturing it the way we want to mature it in the casks we need for whiskey. And as long as that rum is good enough to release, then we may release it in the future as rum. So it would be very unfair for that reason. The only thing I could probably say is it's not one where they're partnered with another whiskey company that puts blue bottles out. Some people know what I'm on about, some people don't, obviously. So yeah, it's an undisclosed rum distillery, unfortunately.
No, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. Happy to happy to dive back into the next Travis.
Yeah. So I think you've got the smoky next.
Yeah, it's the smoky next, so the standard release smoky.
Yeah. So jumping back to the beginning of our smoky journey now on tonight's drams. It's exactly what it says in the bottle. It's smoky. It's peated. like I sort of touched on earlier, the malted barley that we have is taken up to Scotland to be malted, and we use peat from the mainland of Scotland, just northeast of Aberdeen, I believe. So it's a very typical style of if you want to compare it to a Scottish whiskey that's been peated, it would be something like a Speyside whiskey that's been peated. It's that style of peat. It's not your Islay peat. So you're not really going to pick up those big medicinal flavors. You're going to pick up hopefully more of the earthy style of peat, the wood smoke, things like that. And it's obviously not quite as in your face as the big Islay whiskies. Hopefully it's a little bit more approachable. It's a little bit more softer. It is still peated to a minimum of 55 ppm. So for those of you that know your ppm levelings, it's still quite high. You know, it's not a sort of fairy style of whiskey. It's up there. Everything we have, the minimum we want peated is 55 ppm. So all our whiskies, some are slightly higher. I think we do go up to about 65 ppm with some of them. It's not going to be an Optima or anything like that, but it is a pretty standard heavy hitting peated whiskey. Anybody enjoying this one? Anybody prefer peated whiskies to unpeated?
I prefer peated.
Yeah. Right. So are you all? Again, this is a little bit like our original. That it's our here. Try this type whiskey. This is one that yes, it's peated. Yes, it's either you're either going to love it or you hate it style whiskey. And hopefully, what you're finding in there is those typical sort of smouldering style of smoke. The woody sort of bonfire style of peat.
Yeah, we've got fire roasted marshmallows, smoky bacon walkers. Phil's quoting my favourite restaurant, Ben Brazil, which is smoky meats and cinnamon glazed pineapple.
Yeah.
And yeah, Toby agrees with you. Definitely wood smoke, burning twigs, and
it's interesting, yeah, that you said smoky bacon crisps rather than smoky bacon. I find it is the crisp style one rather than the actual meat flavouring. It's how would be a polite way of saying it. It's kind of like an artificial bacon style, and this is something that I find when people talk about meatiness in whiskies that I don't necessarily come across that in the same way. But yeah, I find it, rather than saying, oh yeah, it's like a smoky bacon sandwich, it's more like the crisps. It's that kind of forced bacon flavour, if that makes sense. And then hopefully you're getting a little bit more spiciness in this one rather than the original as well.
Yeah, do you see James's note? He's got cayenne pepper and a bit of paprika, and I think those are pretty spot on in terms of tasting notes. I definitely get that on the back end. And Phil's got a touch of aniseed, so I think he's agreeing with Nick on that one, because Nick got some menthol in there as well as the smoke, which is quite a common combination. But yeah, I think from my perspective, I think it is very much like the original. It's a bottle you could just have on your shelf when a friend comes around and you want to introduce them to a peated whiskey. It's a nice, easy drinker.
And when I say this, I have no, I'm not meaning it ill towards the Islay whiskies, but it's a lot more approachable than Islay whiskey in the sense of you're either a lover of Islay or you're not. It's a very in-your-face style of peat, whereas I find with this one, you get a lot of people that come forward and say, "Oh, I don't like the peated whiskey," and you give them a try of this, and it's like, "Oh, that's not what I'm expecting," and that's the whole idea of this. It's not that big, sort of. How would you say it to be politically correct these days? It's when people say, "Oh, drinking Islay whiskey is a manly drink. You know, it's the wrong way of terminology, but that's kind of not what we're looking for. We're looking for something that's more approachable and more easy to drink, and more. It's not going to upset you if you try this and you think, yeah, I really don't like it. You're going to be sort of, yeah, it's okay. It's not, ooh, that's horrible type thing. Hopefully, anyway.
Like less
So lager's more, things like lager and that sort of thing are much more of a sort of slap in the face, aren't they?
Yeah.
And, whereas this is.
Oh, he's leaving us hanging there.
It's like a less challenging whiskey look in general, like than what you're saying with Islas or that kind of idea.
Yeah, I mean, you know, with the Islay whiskies, I mean, I'm growing to really enjoy them now and appreciate them, but it's taken me a long time to understand the Islay style of whiskey. And I always found it very offensive in the sense of it was too much for my palate. Whereas I think this is a more acceptable for most palates rather than finding those that love it or hate it.
I can see James moving again, so I don't know if he wants to finish off. You left us on a cliffhanger there, James.
Yeah, my laptop's struggling. I just put it in the chat just in case I was interrupting what was going on. I was saying, so Islay's sort of more like a big.
He don't want us to know, does it?
You couldn't make that up. So he's saying Islay is a slap in the face. This is more of a warm cuddle in your favourite sweater by the fire.
And I think that's a very good way of saying it. You know, that is probably something that we should market actually. And that is the point of it. It's like a warm cuddle from a close friend type thing. You know, it's like a whiskey that you're glad to see again, you know, that you've missed type thing, rather than something that's gonna really test what you're thinking. You know, it's not something you need to dissect all the time. Probably an easy way of saying it. But what have you got next? Have you got the smoky next? Smoky Virgin?
Yeah, it's Smoky Virgin next.
So I think if we jump onto the Smoky Virgin and then we can compare these two and then compare the latter one. And the interesting thing with the next one, which the Smoky Virgin, so compared to the Virgin Oak that we tried earlier, we have jumped up in age as well. And this was a whiskey that we released, I think, about 3 or 4 years ago. And it was really well received at that 6-7 year old mark. We've now jumped up to 9 years. We've upped the ABV from the 43 of the smoky to the 46 of the small batch. I do believe this one is, so this one is 55 ppm. So again, the 55 ppm is at barley stage, not bottling stage. So that's probably coming through on the bottling stage at around the 25 to 29 ppm mark. And hopefully what you'll find with this one is it just ramps up from what you've just had. It is a proper step up. You've got a little bit more intensity on the smoke. You've got a little bit more intensity on the spices because of the Virgin Oak. But you've also hopefully got something that feels very familiar compared to the last one, even though the wood styles have changed as well.
Yeah, I think the Virgin gives the smoke a nice edge, actually. I think it really complements it. We're getting some good notes as well. So James has said the smoke is a lot more subtle on the nose, which I'd agree with. Phil's got pineapple, gentle wafts of smoke, and then Toby, green apples and linseed oil on the nose with this hint of frazzles. So again, with the sort of bacony, fake bacony notes as well.
Yeah.
So.
And I, you know, with the first few, where you said the pineapple, I find the pineapple comes through on quite a lot of our whiskies. And for some reason, it really does ramp up with the Virgin Oak. I find the pineapple on the younger Virgin that we tried earlier and this one, it really does come through. So I often think of when I'm tasting the pineapple on this one, it's like those pineapple fritters where you've just got that little bit of burnt pineapple in there. If that, does anybody sort of find, you know, when you're doing your own pineapple, you get that smell of burning pineapple, and you taste it, and it's got that sort of almost marshmallowy style flavour to it. I can see Phil nodding, so at least one person's agreed with me.
Is the pineapple strong on your new make?
It's funny because I did a masterclass at the recent Leeds Whisky Festival, and it was one of those where it really split the room. So our new make is quite malty. It's very sort of digestive biscuit Ovaltine, and I get the pineapple in there. And when I said to the room, you know, does anybody get the sort of tropical fruit notes, the pineapple, things like that? It was almost like, because we had two tables, one table just looked at me and went, yeah, pineapple, definitely. And the other table was like, huh? So to me, yes, you do get that pineapple note on the new make. To other people, a lot of people have said no. So again, I think it all comes down to maybe opinion and memories and things like that. But yeah, for me, there is definitely the pineapple in there. Does anybody find that we're still ramping up then? Has anybody still got a favourite from any of the previous ones, or are we kind of going every time we go to a new one, it's a better one?
I think this is my favourite so far.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, same for me. Sorry, and this is my favourite. Anybody else getting rosemary on it?
I definitely agree, and that was coming through on the virgin cask as well. Oh, Jade's just put such a fresh peaty whiskey. Totally get the green apples, toasted marshmallow, pineapple, and then the rosemary. So yeah. Another vote for rosemary there.
Yeah, and what we've done recently is, so this year at the festivals now, we're now doing festival exclusives, which have been single casks, and the ones that we've done have been 11-year-old virgin oak, basically. And we did a peated and an unpeated version, and the peated version was sat aside this one. And it was so interesting to see how at full strength, so it was 56.5%. Now, there were different casks. The virgin oak was 30-litre cask, basically, rather than the 200-litre for these, or 220s. But you could see the intensity. And to me, this was a better dram because it gave you a lot gentler intro. You got all the flavours from this one, whereas the full cask strength, to me, virgin and peated, it's in your face. You either love it or you hate it, whereas this one is a lot more approachable. And I think somebody mentioned earlier saying that the peat was certainly more approachable and gentler because of the virgin oak. Fully agree with that. I think with the peat in this one, it becomes very entertaining. It's an added dimension rather than a dominant flavour.
Yeah, that's almost kind of I agree. Kind of say myself on that idea. It's I think that adds something to what the virgin oak is.
Yeah,
but I don't think if I tried this without being told it was peated, that I'd immediately say it was a peated whiskey. I don't think there's anything about it that stands so heavily in that direction. I go, oh, this is clearly your heavily or decent smoked whiskey.
Yeah,
I mean, it's very nice, but it's not immediately obvious that that's what it is.
Yeah, and I think the nice thing with this one is those extra 3 years compared to the unpeated virgin oak that we tried earlier. It's not necessarily made it into a full-on spice. You know, it's still allowed it to be gentle, and that peat has really given it that extra dimension in the sense of it's kind of tamed. The virgin oak's tamed the peat down, and the peat's tamed the virgin oak down, and it really does harmonise it very well.
We've got a couple of votes. So Washhouse and Toby both prefer the unpeated virgin and sherry that we've had so far. So there is some non-peat fans in the house that deserve a shout out.
I mean, to be honest with you, if you put this lineup in front of me and said to me, which one are you going to enjoy the most, then they're the two that I would have probably picked out and said, right, the Virgin Oak and the unpeated sherry are going to be my favourites before I try anything. But having gone through this range on the recent festivals, it surprised me how I've jumped to the peated side. And without sort of leading anybody or anything like that, this one that we're doing now, so the Smoky Virgin, and then jumping onto the Sherry Hogsheads, these are the two that stand out the most for me, because I look at them and think this is quite bold for what we're generally putting out. And I know it's hard to talk because some of you won't have tried it, but I think you've had a couple of the Circus casks, haven't you, Tom?
Yeah, I have, and the peated 12.9-year-old is probably one of my favourite whiskies I've ever drunk. I thought it was incredible.
And that's the thing, you know, when you look at some of those and you think, how did they really come out to be drinkable when you look at the age and the cask styles? But to me, that peated one is almost a ramped up version of this one. But it's, you know, it's although it's a different cask, they're very similar in flavours. The one thing I will say as well is, for those of you, if anybody is looking to buy any of these, I think you've got a discount code, haven't you, for this tasting?
We had a discount on the bottles, but there was a 10% sent through with the bottles, so I was going to share that with the group so that they can order it if they need to.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was just saying to Phil, I've sent him the link for the Smoky Virgin because I think he's going to buy a bottle probably any moment now. So I'll send the link in the chat in a minute for the discount code.
Yeah. So I think we're all pretty, a couple of you saying previous ones, but I think we're kind of at a favourite with this one so far for the majority. Yeah.
Washhouse has put a cheeky question about will the 10% work on casks, but it does raise the question, do the English sell casks to, like Washhouse is an independent bottler, so do you...
Basically, it's funny you should say that, because even I've just received an email saying that there are some casks available for sale. So yes, we are selling some casks. I think you can either, I'm not sure if it's just new make or whether you can buy, but we can chat once we've stopped recording.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll pass your details on to Dave afterwards, if that's all right, Soren, and he can drop you a note. Yeah.
But if we want to move on to the Sherry Hogshead, because this is where I think we will split the room now. For those of you that have picked either the Smoky Virgin or the Sherry or the Virgin earlier, I think this one, this one to me is something that we've put out, and it really has raised eyebrows. This is something that a lot of people didn't expect from us. And when I was told about, we were putting two different casks out, we were putting a peated and an unpeated sherry style whiskies out, I was so looking forward to the unpeated, and they released the peated first. And as much as I do like the unpeated, this is my baby. I love this one. For anybody that doesn't drink peat as a general rule, hopefully you'll drink this one, and you'll, you know, it will, hopefully most of you will say, wow, this is bloody good. So like I said earlier, 46% all natural colour, a majority of bourbon cask, and then finished in the sherry butts, sherry hogsheads. What you'll find with this one compared to the previous one, so the previous one was sherry butts, this is hogsheads. I think this one has taken on a little bit more of the sherry notes in there, but that peat just, it just makes it so drinkable. So I think, yeah, I've put the chat on now because, so first fill hogsheads. So same as the butts, 3 years in Oloroso, 2 years then for PX, and then between 14 and 16 months with the bourbon in for a finish. Now, this is something that a lot of people argue about as to what you call a second maturation compared to a finish. We at the company always said that if it's had at least 4 seasons, so 1 full year, it's a second maturation. If you want to call it a finish, that's fine. You know, I'm not going to argue with you. As far as we're concerned, it's a maturation. We're happy for it to be called a finish. We're not going to fall out over it. It doesn't matter. It's whether you enjoy the whiskey or not. Squashes. Yeah, I really get that one. Yeah, I think the smoke on this one really does come across a little bit more. I do think we've actually ramped up on this one as well. Something makes me think this one was 61 ppm. Have you got the bottle there, Tom? I think it should say 61 ppm, does it? 65? It's the purple label.
I've got 2 of the purples. It's 41 ppm, this one.
Is it 41?
41 ppm, which probably goes with Phil's note. So Phil said normally the smoke overtakes the sherry in a smoky sherry, whereas this is perfectly balanced. I think I'm right in saying that there's no more of this available on your website, is there? Sorry.
None of ours. No, we sold out of this very quickly.
Yeah, I got this bottle on Master of Malt, but
I was about to say Master of Malt have got some, or did have some. Is it the Little Whisky Shop? The Little Whisky Shop? They've still got some online, I believe. If you look around for it, there are some outlets with this, and I think gently smoked, yeah.
I think Master of Malt do have it, but it's lovely whiskey, isn't it?
I think this is stunning. I really do think this is stunning. And from somebody who doesn't drink a lot of peated whiskey, for me to pick this out on a lineup, but I do think the Virgin Oak is just as good, but this just has that little bit of an eye. You know, it's something when you look at this. For me, as I say, as somebody that doesn't drink a lot of peated whiskey, this stopped me in my tracks. It was like, oh, hello, this is nice. This to me is one of those bottles that you maybe don't want to share with your friends too much.
Is it the gently smoked? Is it the batch 5?
Yeah.
So this is the Little Whisky Shop has still got some.
Yeah. I mean, some people put it out as gently smoked. Some people put it out as sherry hogshead. It's the same whiskey. Yeah.
Okay.
Jade's got a good note in the chat. So she says it smells like squashies with charcoal thrown in, which I think's quite accurate. Yeah. Che says smoke's clearer in this than the Virgin Oak. And yeah, James is finding it quite savoury and is getting a lot of meat coming through on it. So
yeah, and it's surprising when you look at this compared to the sherry hogsheads. The butts. How different they actually are when you think, you know, both sets of casks have been seasoned the same, both had the same whiskey virtually put in, obviously peated and unpeated, I get that, but you know how different a whiskey they really are. This really does balance out with that sherry. I think it's more of a balanced whiskey. Not sure I'll be going half drum on this one. Yeah, it's quite funny because the festivals we've taken this to, every one of them have sold out within half an hour, basically, of starting. As soon as people have tried it, they've gone and bought it. And every festival we've taken it to have all come, you know, have you got any more stuff? Have you got any more? It's like, no, we haven't got any more. And this is one of those whiskies where you have people clambering to buy it. And I do think, as a distillery that's not necessarily known for its big, full-bodied style of whiskey, this really has made people look at what we're doing. And I know you sort of mentioned the Oloroso from Bimba earlier. This, to me, and I mean, I love Bimba. I think it's fantastic whiskey. And theirs is obviously full maturation in those casks, younger. This is more of a designed whiskey in a sense that we've thought about. And I'm not saying Bimba haven't thought about it. Please don't, you know, take that away. But this is something that we've created over a period of time, that we've looked at how we want to do something, and this is something that's come to fruition. So 5 years in the planning, in theory, because that's how long it took to season the casks. We knew what we was looking for. We knew how we wanted to go. And I think even we looked at this when we started to taste it and thought, this is better than we were expecting. This is really something on another level to what we thought we were going to get. Cocoa chocolate, yeah. This with chili. The chili, yeah, is a very good shout, because I do think with this one, rather than some of our other ones, that chili note is certainly more prevalent. It's certainly more noticeable. Rather than it being sort of a peppery note, it's more of a chili. It's chocolate infused with chili, I think, is the best way of saying it.
So what are people's thoughts then overall? What do you think of the English whiskey drams we've tried tonight? Has it been a good lineup? Have you enjoyed a particular one of them?
I'm going to try talking and see if I freeze again, but it looks like it might be. But
James is gone again.
Yeah, it's as soon as I start talking.
You're coming through loud and clear for me, James.
Oh, okay.
I was cool. Just going to see if he stopped to see. Sorry.
Yanking my chain there, Soren. It's quite possible. Yeah. For me, certainly the last one is by far my favourite. Really, really, really nice way to finish the tasting. It's been a really interesting sort of journey, really, because I don't have a huge amount of experience with the English Whiskey Company at all. So it's nice to sort of see it, and I might have to travel east for at some point and come and visit. Because
please do.
I have visited the English distillery and found it quite an interesting tour, especially if you pay the extra and do the sort of masterclass tour rather than just the standard. So you get to, with that one, you get to enjoy a selection of drams with the head distiller there, David. And it's quite interesting. No,
unfortunately, David's left.
Oh,
yeah. So
well, when I went, it was David, but with the new guy.
Yes. So basically, what happens with those is, I think it's once a month at the moment. We do on a Saturday, we do a world tasting, and then we do a more in-depth English whiskey tasting. And that it will still be done with the distiller. So it's probably Chris, or it will be Mike himself. So our global whiskey ambassador. Or salesman, director of sales, I think he is now. So it will be one of those two people generally. So you're still getting a very knowledgeable person in there. It just isn't David anymore. But yeah, it's definitely worth a visit. And things have probably changed since you went as well, Tom, because we've now got, so where the shop was and the restaurant, that's now a restaurant and gin distillery.
Yeah, no, when I went, you had I think they just started doing the gin. I went in June,
so you
June
can
last year.
Yeah. So you can now, guys, the gin is nothing to do with us. It's an independent person who runs the restaurant now, but you can go there and make your own gin, learn how to make gin, bottle your own gin or buy gin. But of course, you're all going for the whiskey, so but it's just a nice little extra bit. But yeah, it's certainly a nice place to visit. But sorry, what was that? That stuff years ago and avoided like the plague ever since. No, I mean, and I think that's a very good, honest opinion there, and I think that's the way a lot of people have looked at it. You know, and there's no point hiding from the fact of, yeah, a lot of people did try it years ago and really wasn't impressed with what we was doing. A lot of things have changed. The way we do our cuts, the way we mature, there's a lot more thought gone into it. There's a lot more, I don't want to say professionalism, because that's the wrong way of saying things. Things are done a lot differently these days. And I think now we're starting to show people that whereas some distilleries will come in and they will put very dominant casks straight away. So, you know, things like Bimber, where you're getting a 3-year-old whiskey that tastes well in advance of where it should be at 3 years old. They've used real dominant first fill casks, whereas we've always done a lot more gentler style whiskey. We've always, it's a softer style of whiskey that we've been putting out there, and that has often shown the flaws in whiskey sometimes, and we're not going to hide that. You will get that youthfulness in there a lot more. You will get the flaws in the whiskey sometimes, rather than putting the full-bodied sherried virgin oak casks that are very dominant. We've shown you that, yeah, you know, some of our whiskey hasn't been perfect, and I'm the first person to say that. You know, I was put off in the early days with what we were putting out there. But I think when you start to try what we're doing now, and you appreciate the whiskey as it's getting older. I mean, a classic example, Port Ellen. Who's had Port Ellen in here?
Oh, we got Nick giving a thumbs up.
Yeah.
Man of refined taste, Mr. Gascoigne.
The thing is with Port Ellen, everybody shouts about it now. But when it was open, nobody really wanted it. You know, people were buying it, and it wasn't great. And then all of a sudden they shut it, it matured, and all of a sudden, it's not, obviously, it's rare and it's expensive, so people that necessarily know what they're talking about will love it because of that, but it's a lot better whiskey than what it was when it was younger. And I think that's the same with us, that our whiskey, now it's maturing a little bit more, and now we're doing more things with it. It's showing the potential, what it can be now. And this is why, if you look around at the independents, a lot more independents are starting to put English whiskey out there. And yes, you know, if we put younger whiskey out there, it might not be in the same league as some people that are putting young whiskey out there in very dominant casks. But that's because we do a different style, and we're looking at producing whiskey slightly differently. We're looking at having a profile out there that people recognize our whiskey, rather than being all about the cask. It's about what's underneath, and it can be broken down. And I have no problem when people come to me and say, look, we tried your whiskey 5, 6, 7 years ago and didn't enjoy it. And it's really good now to see when you offer them something that we're putting out now, all of a sudden it's like, oh, wasn't expecting that. That's brilliant for us. That means we've started to get things right, and that's fine. You know, we all make mistakes. And the thing is, for us, if you go back 6, 7 years, we had no competition. You know, we were the first ones doing it. We were making mistakes. We made the mistakes that the rest of the English whiskey companies now are learning from. You know, I mean, when you go back, and like I said earlier, we started in 2006. We were the only ones producing whiskey full time. There's now 33 English whiskey distilleries out there. 33 in a matter of 10, 15 years. I mean, that's astonishing when you think we went over 100 years with no whiskey distilleries. And people said English can't make whiskey. Same as the rest of the world can't make whiskey. The only people that can make whiskey is Scotch and Irish. Well, hopefully now we're showing you that that's a lot of rubbish. We can make whiskey, and hopefully what you've tried tonight, at least if there's only one whiskey in there that you've liked. I think most of you have liked most of them, but even if you've only got one, we've still taken you to a point where you can now go forward and say, yeah, I've tried something from them. It's pretty decent. I might look at it again in the future, which means we've created something for you that's given you an impression.
Well, I think the notes are really good from everyone tonight, and Jade has also been on a similar journey to Wash House, where tonight sort of opened her eyes to what you guys are doing. And I think, you know, really great comment from Ben, actually. So he says, you guys were the trailblazers for English whiskey, bound to make some mistakes along the way. He hasn't been tasting tonight, but any English I've had over the past couple of years has been very good. And I know, Soren, you were at Kendal Whiskey Festival, where I got to try the smoky sherry, I think, for the first time.
Yeah.
And Ben was also there, so I'm sure he managed to extract a dram or two out of you on that event, judging by the look of him afterwards.
And that's the thing, you know, I mean, that was the first show that we put the sherry hoggy out there, and obviously at that point we didn't know how it was going to be taken. We had high hopes for it, and I remember walking away from the Friday night session, and I think they'd sold out on the Friday night, if I remember right, or the Saturday first session. And it was one of those where everybody that tried it was, you know, it was just like, wow, that's not what we were expecting from the English Whiskey Company. And that's what you're going to see going forward. You're going to get a lot more of those whiskies where people are saying, do you know, this is better than what we're expecting. You know, we weren't expecting this, or we've tried it before and we didn't like it, but we're now sort of not hooked on it, but, you know, we're having our minds changed. And you'll see that swing from really big, dominant, in-your-face whiskies to back to the gentleness, and then back again and back again. And I think going forward, knowing what we've got maturing in the warehouses, I think there is going to be a whiskey eventually for everybody. You know, it's for those people that maybe don't like what you've tried tonight. Hopefully you've all enjoyed them, but, you know, along the line, at some point, we will bring something out that you like. On the opposite side, we're probably going to bring out whiskies that you still don't like, but that's fine, because we don't want to bring out a whiskey that everybody loves all the time. I mean, we love to, obviously, but, you know, what's the point? We might as well just release one whiskey and say, here, you're going to enjoy it. So what's the point in us giving you something different? And like we've shown you tonight, I mean, you've gone through 8 whiskies, which I think you'll all agree have been very different. And there's not many distilleries out there that can give you 8 very, very different whiskies and not have shown you the whole portfolio.
It's been brilliant. There's a question in the chat from James. I don't know, James, if you want to come off mute and try and answer it.
I'll see if I can talk for more than 30 seconds. I just noticed on the website you've got a Platinum Jubilee release.
Yep.
That's there. What's the story on that one? What is it in terms of casks and stuff like that?
So basically, that's one. I'm not going to tell you what it tastes like, because I was given my bottle in the middle of this COVID bloody thing, so I don't know what it tastes like. I think if you look at our history, we've always released something for things like births and weddings and things like that within the royal family. This is obviously celebrating the platinum, which 70 years, I believe. From memory, it's 80% virgin oak. No, 80% bourbon, 10% virgin oak, 10% sherry. I haven't got my bottle, so I believe it's 46% ABV. Again, it's done in one of the decanter style bottlings. The big difference is, rather than it having a label on, it's all engraved, so it's a little bit posher. I'm not sure what the RRP is on that one, to be honest with you.
It's on the website for 75, and yes, it's 46%.
Yeah. Limited edition. I think this is it. 3,000 bottles. I think it's saying.
Don't think it mentions how many
Does it
I
not
saw
mention it?
on the email I sent there was something about it being 3,000 bottles.
3,000, yeah. And yeah, so I mean, it's one of those where it's kind of a collector's item, but we want you to drink it as well. So, I don't know the best way of describing it. You know, it's a little bit for everybody there. You've got the diehard people that are monarchy lovers and things like that. So obviously we like to put something out for them. The whiskey inside, I am told, is very good. I'm not going to tell you that it's fantastic because I don't know myself. I haven't tasted it. So yeah, I mean it's a nice blend of whiskies. I know I was talking to Mike. He's one of the ones that put it together, and he was quite happy with it when they, you know, when they brought it and they blended it together. He was one, and he was raving about it, saying how good it was. So yeah, it's one of those. I don't know how many bottles will be sold and actually opened. I think a lot of them will remain shut. So I'll tell you once mine's opened, because once I can actually taste something, then I'll start and have a drink of it. But yeah, at the moment, I don't know what it's. I can't tell you much about it because obviously I haven't tasted it. So
that's fair dues. Yeah.
But the bottle's nice. I will say
very
that.
nice. Yeah. It's
the
almost
bottle
worth
is
drinking and then
gorgeous.
putting some tea in it.
Yeah. I mean that's you know, that is one of those things that, to me, why not? Because you know the whiskey inside is meant for drinking. So he says with a load of bottles sat behind him, but you know, whiskey is made for drinking basically. So why not open it and refill it? That's, you know, that's one of those. But again, the nice thing about it is, what's to stop you drinking it and filling it with something else of ours and just putting the cork back in anyway? You know, them bottles are beautiful. Use it for whatever. And I think that would actually look quite nice with a darker whiskey behind it. Oh, James is frozen. I thought he was just smiling at me.
We've got two more questions in the chat, Soren, and then feel free to log off because I know that you've been doing this while not feeling 100% tonight. So the first question was from Nick, and he just asked if there's any different cask finishes that you're experimenting with at the moment. So I guess he's thinking of tequila casks or Tabasco casks.
We have got quite a few different styles of casks in the warehouse at the moment. Certainly got Sauternes, we've got brandy, we've got I'm sure there is a couple of tequila casks. Now, don't hold me fully on that one, but I think there are some tequila casks. We're certainly chatting with a couple of local breweries at the moment, so possibly looking at some pale ales and things like that. And our casks are going the opposite way for them to mature some in, so I presume we'll get them back. I think some have already gone.
You do have, so when I came to the distillery, I bought some English whiskey beer that had been matured or it was beer that was matured in English whiskey casks.
Yeah, so I think them casks have now been refilled with whiskey to mature on. So, you know, they're and I'm pretty sure we've done some with cider. Sure there's some cider casks sat somewhere. I mean, the good thing about it, obviously, we are not held to the Scottish way of doing things, so we can do these things. We do tend to stick with the Scotch Whisky Association rules until it comes to something we don't want to. So yeah, I mean, the majority of things we do are pretty strictly, and then every now and again we'll do something. But like I say, you know, there are some interesting whiskies in there. I know we did some rye whiskies recently where I had a couple of samples. So if anybody tried the rye whiskey, I mean, that was gorgeous. That was virgin oak. We did have some rye maturing in sherry casks, and that was quite interesting. Very different to what you expect. What else have we got? So we've got Sauternes. We've obviously the Circus bottlings. We've got quite a few 30 litre and 50 litre casks. Some of them H-red wine, some of them virgin oak. So, you know, there's those things. So we're experimenting with different size casks. Have we got anything that really stands out? The brandy ones are quite nice. Red wine, white wine.
Can I just say, Nick's smile when you said brandy ones are quite nice. I think you've got if you've got any brandy ones coming out, I think Nick's buying a case.
Yeah, I mean, I know there is some brandy ones out there. I'm just trying to think, what else have we got? It's one of those when you walk through the warehouses and you're getting told what there is, and every time you come to a different cask, you forget the previous one type thing because it's something exciting coming up. But yeah,
I wondered if you might do a mezcal or something like that, because I'm picking up herbal notes on quite a lot of your whiskey, so I wondered if that would lend itself. But
it has been mentioned, I believe. But again, you know, the problem is with a lot of things when you sometimes get lost in, because I'm not full time with the production and things like that. So a lot of the conversations are what we are doing, what we might do, what we'd like to do, and some of those conversations get lost within each other. That you sometimes think, oh yeah, we've mentioned mezcal, we are doing mezcal, and then it's like, are we doing mezcal? Did I hear that right? Are we doing this? And you know, with cognac casks and things like that. So there are a lot of things that we're looking at doing, and that we are doing, and that we have done. I mean, one of the ones that, for those that do like things, we're still recording, aren't we? So I've got to be careful what I say sometimes. The Sauternes casks are gorgeous. The Sauternes casks are really good. We've obviously got the rye. As far as I'm aware, those rye casks have been refilled with whiskey now on new make. So that will be something. Are you looking at stopping the recording soon, Tom?
Yeah, why don't I ask you the last question and then we can stop the recording. So the last question we ask everyone who comes on Certified Original Chat, and it is Die Hard a Christmas movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, there we are. So you've made everyone apart from Luna really happy with that question, but she won't see this as she wasn't part of the tasting. So if anyone reports back, that's that. But
to be honest with you, I only said yeah because I could see Jade shaking her head.
Oh, I didn't realise Jade was a dissenter. Right. Well, just before we start recording, massive thanks to Soren, and thanks for sorting out the discount on the bottles and for everything else you've done to make this a affordable tasting for everyone, and it's been really enjoyable as well. So I'll stop the recording there, and to everyone watching back, hope you enjoyed the drams. Cheers.
Thanks to you, Tom, for sorting it as well. Thanks, mate.
Oh, no worries.